Look at this! Incredible.
In the 5 years of my mudlarking career, I have found thousands of objects. And some people ask, do you always go home with something? And the answer is yes, because there is always an artifact to find. What mudlarks do is really important to preserve history as soon as it's found. My name is Alessio Checconi. I'm a paleontologist and a mudlark, meaning I go on the foreshore of the River Thames looking for artifacts during the periods of low tide. I started mudlarking in 2019 during lockdown. We could go out for maybe half an hour, and I live next to the river. And so in order not to meet people and to have a moment of quiet, I would reach the foreshore. The Thames foreshore is a unique archaeological site. There's no other river in the world that has the coexistence of two critical factors. One is that it has been lived for thousands of years, and two, which is extremely tidal. So we have a tide that twice a day exposes meters of foreshore for anybody to explore. The river is really an evolving, living organism. Areas get covered by sediment, areas get eroded by it. And so each day you come not really sure how much new sediment you find, or if an area has been eroded down to what we call it, the dark mud. The mud that has not been touched or redeposited since the moment it was laid down. It's an extremely dynamic environment, and it keeps changing as it has been changing for the last several thousands of years. There are over 1.5 million archaeological objects collected, most of which have been collected by amateurs, either detectorists or mudlarks in the Thames. The UK allowing this search is also allowing a lot of history to be retrieved.
The museum has got a really long relationship of working with mudlarks, and so it felt just a fantastic opportunity to explore our amazing collections and also some of the recent discoveries the mudlarks have made. We invite visitors to enter the world of the mudlarks, to step into their shoes, to get a sense of the discovery and the excitement that comes every time they step down onto the foreshore.
Every time I leave the house, I'm so excited and thinking, what am I going to find today? I have found thousands of objects. And some people ask, do you always go home with something? And the answer is yes, because there is always an artifact to find. Oh, it's complete! This is a 16th century, if I'm correct, German base of a pot. Oh, look at this! Oh, this is such a lovely piece. It was the base of a bigger vessel. We need to always put back the mud for minimum disturbance. You can see the imprints of the fingerprint of whoever made it. Everything goes in there, and then at home you do the screening.
The Thames is a really important route of connection between this country, the continent, Europe, and also further afield as well. People have migrated here for thousands of years, but we also have those trade networks as well, the movement of goods, people and ideas. And these artifacts hold traces of those relationships, of those roots, of what was important to the people that were coming here, what was important to the country, what was being bought and sold. By steadily recording the mudlarks' finds and all the artefacts that are in the Thames, we're able to build up a much better idea around who was living here in London, who was working, what their lives looked like, and explore those moments of London's history that that object can tell us about.
Each mudlark has a field of obsession, I would call it, rather than interest. And I'm so fascinated by leather objects coming from the foreshore. And leather for me tell a big story. This is a 17th century shoe that I found. It probably belonged to a man because of the size. And it shows us actually the shape, at least here, of where the pressure of the foot was and the big toe. We know that they were not too wealthy. In fact, there is a hole at the top of the big toe, but there is also a repair. In fact, there is a piece of leather that they put inside as a second edition. A lot of Victorian shoes that show deformation, especially in one side. They have been worn by a foot that was much bigger than the shoes, and that tells a story of children that couldn't allow themselves to buy larger shoes, so they would overstretch what they had. They would probably had rickets, so they would have bent knees, and therefore some sides of the shoes are completely much more eroded than others. And so once I realized what these objects can tell us, I learned how to restore them. And so I'm extremely chuffed that today, we can see it, and it tells us a story of a Londoner that was living in this area 500 years ago.
Archaeological waterlogged leather tends to come to me in a wet state, because as soon as you start getting air involved in a process that previously was anaerobic, you start creating new chemical reactions that will very quickly potentially degrade an object of any kind. So in particular, organic material, their structures are heavily degraded already, and the water is creating a support system for them. Not only stopping microbial degradation from happening, but it's also supporting physically, structurally, the material. And as soon as that water starts coming out, we see collapse, we see warping and cracking and embrittlement, which means that those objects are so much harder than to study and to understand. Through brushing and using deionized water, we'll remove all the soil we can from the surface. And at that point, things will become a little bit more obvious to see if we have decoration or areas of stitching. Once the cleaning process is complete, the leather object would go into an immersion bath with glycerol. So the humectant ability of glycerol to go in between the fibers of the leather and give it potentially a little bit more flexibility once the treatment is finished. Once the immersion process is complete, the leather objects go into a chest freezer. Depending on the period of time, we will already have historical evidence, perhaps, of what leather was mostly preferred. And then through the grain analysis, we can further identify it.
We have put together a recreated foreshore that are dotted with these artefacts, and all of the objects here, they all relate to activities that are focused around the Thames, but also talk to some of the common themes that are important to life both then and for our lives today. Themes like love, feeding, crime and punishment, faith, craft, traveling, so many things that we all experience. One of these discoveries was a ball and chain that would have fastened around the ankle of a prisoner. It dates to the 1700s and the 1800s. And when the person found it, as he pulled it from the mud, then he also found the lock that would have fitted around the ankle. And rather horrifically, the lock is still locked.
When a conservator gets a chance of cleaning a metal object, we can be sure that information is not lost. Metal objects that come from watery environments and waterlogged environments tend to have excellent preservation with beautiful preserved surfaces, which means that when you have a chance to clean the concretions and corrosion layers, you end up with objects that look very similar to what they would have looked like when they were first disposed of.
Many mudlarks, when they bring artefacts into the museum for recording, one of the things that they talk about is that sense of connection, of being the first person to touch something since the person who made it or used it or dropped it. And so it's that real connection that spans hundreds, if not thousands of years. One of these recent discoveries the mudlarks have made was this little tin-glazed earthenware jar, and it would have been found in many London homes. So not such an unusual find until we had a little look inside. And that's when we discovered discovered that some of the cream was still preserved inside this little ointment pot. You can clearly see that there are some finger marks where someone's hand has gone in, scooped out some of the cream, and even, I think they took too much because they've smeared a little bit, put it back, if you like. And so it's amazing that the river has preserved this. It dates to about the 1600s, so that's been in the river for a couple of hundred years. And that ointment is still there. We have pulled together a really remarkable selection of finds that have come out of the river. But I don't think you can separate the finds from the people, both the people who made and owned the artifacts, but also the people that found them as well.
Someone spent time doing this, someone allowed me to have this moment of joy and happiness when I found something is made. Because what happens in the moment when you find an object is that the person that made it all of a sudden becomes part of you, and the person comes to you by being found. All of us have this desire to do something important in life that makes them remembered in time. Mudlarking has been really important for me to realize that people make history and these are remembered without being celebrities. And history will find a way to bring up your name. And our rubbish today will become tomorrow's treasure.